Hello and welcome to the Beautiful Business Podcast, where today I am joined by the amazing Rob Pierre. Rob is best known for being the co-founder of Jellyfish Agency, which started in 2005 and grew to over 2,000 employees across 38 global offices. During his time at Jellyfish, he's renowned for creating a unique organisational infrastructure that really frames leadership in a new and wonderful light. Rob exited the business in 2023, and now he spends his time supporting businesses that have a wider societal impact to achieve sustainable growth. In today's episode, I'm keen to learn more about Rob's time at Jellyfish, building such a vivid culture and reputation, and just how he earned the badge of largest sale of an independent agency in the UK.
I went into board meetings and was asked about a certain subject, and I said, I'm not accountable for delivering that, and I'm not going to spend 3 weeks preparing for this board meeting so that I know everything that's going on. So I have a bunch of subordinates that report into me so that if the board asks me any question, I've got the answer. For me, that's not good use of time. You know, it was about bring the person in who's accountable for that initiative and they could tell you about it. I know what I'm accountable for, and we all work as a team and all know our place. All of our initiatives ladder up to our goal and our thematic goal and our mission and vision and primary business objectives. So we're all good, and everybody can concentrate on where they add value, and we're matching capabilities to initiatives, not necessarily job roles. And that gives you all that flexibility. One of our missions was to be the biggest boutique agency in the world. And it sounds very fluffy, and it sounds like, oh, that's the most ambiguous goal anybody can come up with, until you go one layer down and say, what are the traits of a boutique agency?
Welcome to the Beautiful Business Podcast from the Wow Company. If you're searching for the right strategies, tools, and connections to ignite your thinking and elevate your business, then join us for a fortnightly dose of inspiration. Our guests range from industry-leading agencies and cutting-edge tech pioneers to motivational speakers and executives, all offering actionable insights to help you thrive in profit and purpose. So, whether you're a growing consultancy or an agency leader, this podcast is your source of knowledge and encouragement to spark meaningful change in your business and beyond. Rob, hello. Welcome to the podcast.
Lovely to be here. Thank you for having me.
Really excited to have you here today. I always start off by wanting to know a little bit more about the actual person behind all of these amazing achievements. So would you be willing to tell us something about you as Rob the person that we might not already know?
Well, I mean, I've been telling this story a few times, so I suppose if it's my audience that look at videos on LinkedIn, etc., they may have heard it before, but maybe your audience, they may not know everything. So I will say I grew up in Trinidad. Maybe not all of your audience knows that. I was around a lot of people in Trinidad. It's one big hustle. And so I was around a lot of entrepreneurs and people trying to make money in enterprising ways. What else may you not know? So I moved over back to this country when I was 14 years old, went to a state school here in Surrey, in Redhill in Surrey, called St. Bede's. And showed up with this really strong, thick Trinidad accent, using a vernacular that no one really understood. And had to really sort of get used to new smells and new culture and new food and new curriculum. And it was a really interesting time for me.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I had no idea. So that transition, was that quite a difficult one for you, or did you settle in quite easily?
Yeah, it was really strange because in some cases, as an example, they would avoid talking to me because they didn't really understand what I was saying. This is what some of my close friends today tell me about historically. I'd go back after 2 years of being here, started to lose my accent. My hairstyle was different. The clothes I wore were different. So by the time I got back over to Trinidad when I was 16 for a visit, I was a foreigner to them. Obviously, I was a foreigner here in the UK, so it was a real strange time, and not knowing exactly where home is. And but what I've learned over time is that home is where you make it. And if you find yourself in the right environment, it is people are all individuals. And so you shouldn't have to conform or be the same as everyone for it to be home. So the whole point, I hear people often talk about somebody being diverse. And I always find myself correcting them and saying, no, everyone's an individual, but you can create a diverse group. So it's one of those interesting points. So that's one of the things I think that's possibly made me the way I am today. And you just observe and imitate what's around you, especially at a young age. And maybe some of that. It can't be all of that. Otherwise, anybody from a Caribbean island that comes over here will be an entrepreneur and trying to have a hustle and a side hustle. Maybe they do, but I think it's just a part of what made me who I am today.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing. Do you ever find yourself slipping back into the accent? I find people that had a different accent before can sometimes slip into it when they're tired or not concentrating. Do you ever find that?
So the only time it's likely to happen, because I'm so conscious, because if it's not authentic, if I don't think it's authentic, having grown up there, I'm too embarrassed to even do it consciously. But the only time it might happen is when I'm with a group of Trinities and we're what's called liming. If we're liming and drinking a few rum and cokes and the storytelling starts, I kind of every now and again it goes up and it just drifts in. So yeah, it's but I can't do it consciously, and I'm too embarrassed.
I love that you feel like it's really shaped you as it should. Like that's just such an awesome history. So yeah, thank you for sharing. Let's get on to Jellyfish, shall we? It would be rude not to, I'm sure. So let's think about the history of Jellyfish. So when you first started with your business partner, Paul, was it Paul Walsh?
Paul Walsh, yeah.
Yep. What were you setting out to achieve?
Well, the way it came about is that Paul was already running a boutique IT consultancy here in Reigate in Surrey. And he was already doing some digital marketing, actually started to get some seriously good traction with Which, the Consumer Association, operating in the publishing sector. He built a microsite for Which, and then did ask the $1 million question, well, how do you plan to promote it? And, there's this thing, PPC, I could actually support you in driving traffic. So the thing about Paul is he was always very commercial, but also has a load of knowledge and it's very technical. So he was already on that track. So we were just setting out to provide more of that service, because I was going on stag do's and weddings and kept bumping into him, talking about what I did, which was more on the commercial marketing, team development. So very complementary skills, but both of us had that sort of commercial entrepreneurial side to us. So that was almost the bit that knit us together. And then you had all of our other peripheral skills that had made a good team. And so we kept talking about it. And eventually he was so enthusiastic about what he's already built and what the opportunity is that I eventually said, yeah, okay, I'll join. And I want to go into it as partners. We consolidated everything he had down to sold off all the network support and IT services, consolidated it down to a team that can continue to facilitate some of the digital marketing. And that was the start of Jellyfish. And to know what we set out to do is almost like knowing what I set out to do when I had children. I kind of know I want good children that turn into good adults and have great values and that add value to the world and have purpose and integrity and all of those things. But every day was a school day, and you're not born with the knowledge and the experience to be a parent, and then you adapt and you pivot and you learn and along the way. And I think that's all we did with Jellyfish. We reimagined what it was capable of achieving every single day in the same way. Because the reason I always bring this analogy up is my daughter was born the same year I joined Paul and we did Jellyfish. So Paul's business was called Avondale IT. And of course, then we sold off the IT component, stuck to the marketing, rebranded as Jellyfish. And that's where I would say we're sort of co-founders of Jellyfish, because it was only a handful of people, and it was really the birth of what became the Jellyfish that everyone knows today. Anyway, I use that analogy all the time. So my daughter was born in 2005. I joined Paul in 2005. And on that journey, I now have an adult daughter who's going off to university, and I have an adult business that has gone off with brand tech to do great things. So, yeah.
Wow. 2 parallel journeys going at the same time. Wow, that's incredible. I saw a YouTube video of you in 2016. Well, I saw it this year, but of you back in 2016 when you were fitting out the Shard.
Correct. It was all metal floors, and I'm sitting in the middle of an empty...
Exactly, yeah. And you just look so excited. And you said, I've got it written down here, I see Jellyfish in 5 years being a truly global agency with 1,000 people. And that is what truly excites me.
Oh, wow.
And I just wonder how it feels to reflect back on that now, like 8 years later.
I love it when it works out, and I mean, I'm always talking about retrospective wisdom. And yeah, to be able to sit here and go, oh, look at that, 2016, we felt we were going to be over 1,000 people. We knew we were onto something. We were just fitting out the Shard, which for me is one of the big pivotal moments in our history, is that, to be in a premises with that iconic status, and just 2 words. Where's your office? The Shard, accessible to everyone, overlooking London, can hire people. There's no question about our legitimacy as a business when you've got such an amazing physical presence. So all of those things, it was such a great moment, and we were doing it on the premise that we felt we could continue to grow to get to that stage. Obviously, we ended up peaking, I think, in 2023 at 2,200 people in 38 global offices, etc. So we were definitely on the right. We definitely did it, and we did it in good time. We did it well within the 5 years, and continued to grow.
You smashed it out of the park. It wasn't just did it. You achieved it and beyond, didn't you? With the sale of Jellyfish, remind me, was that the largest sale of an independent agency? Was that in the UK?
UK heritage business, yes. I mean, this is just the information you get from all the brokers, and there have been some big ones in the past. There have been, I think, ones we know of, like even in the early days, Essence, that has now become Mediacom Essence, and you've got what was another big one? I think at the time, Eye Level, and historically there have been some really big ones. But from what I understand, the final value when selling to brand tech is the biggest independent agency sales. So in the digital marketing, probably, I'm not sure. It's one of those facts that I've heard. I'm sticking by.
I would take that and own that, absolutely. Congratulations! What a great badge to earn, right? And I just wonder, so talk us through when you started to realize that it was the right time for you to step back or step away from Jellyfish. How did that all start for you?
It never really started at any one point. It was so organic, and it's about scale and opportunity. And it already started in November 2019 when we sold half to Fimalac, and then we took on some of the Fimalac agencies, and then that started to fold into Jellyfish and was homogenizing into the one Jellyfish proposition. And we were on that path. The minute you have investors like that, and then they tip into majority shareholders, you're on a different path, because you've got investors, and investors are on a road to building value in a business so that there's a return on investment for shareholders and the investors. And it's a slightly different ball game. So you're already committed to this path of building shareholder value within your organization. And so that started. And then that coupled with the fact that you're working with bigger clients, bigger budgets, and the cash flow needed to be a sustainable business and to be solvent at all points becomes more and more. You got clients who are spending millions a month on Google, for example. And if you don't pay Google on time, it's an automated system that shuts down not just the account that you're not paying, it's all of your accounts. And so then you might have a client for legitimate reasons that pays you even one day late. how do you, it might be £5 million on that month. You could just about do that if you're at that scale. Then one more client pays one day late. And where's this money coming from? And you suddenly become this bank in between these two big mammoth companies. And you realize that that's difficult to do. So you arguably become a victim of your own success, and the stakes are so high that original entrepreneurial shareholders just wouldn't be able to operate at that level. And so that's what ended up happening. It just got bigger. It became more and more essential that we had that holding company and that war chest to make sure that we could continue to operate and compete with the bigger companies. And of course, terms are extended, so the clients want 90-day terms, suppliers only give you 30-day terms, and this gap between suppliers and clients just keeps getting bigger. And so, yeah, I think it just organically we got to that point.
How was the exit process for you? You're giving up something that you and Paul kind of built from this place, and now, like you say, almost that victim of your own success. It's huge and it's massive, but it's something that you still built from scratch. So how did it feel for you?
So what's interesting is that Paul, I think we spun off another company called Infinity Call Tracking. So we built a call tracking platform within Jellyfish, and I think around, I don't know, it could have even been 4 or 5 years in, Paul then went and ran the Infinity Call Tracking. It was actually also Chris Lee, our CFO, that came in a year in, and he was actively involved. And in a couple of the acquisitions, we had Nick and Ed, who owned We Do. They became very senior people very earlier on. Mark Deeprose, who had a company called Uncle that we bought, that was building our creative proposition. And so there were a few that came in, and that's the sort of team that then we started to build out that have gone on this journey. So in some ways, did it with Paul at the beginning, but what the people that have been there for the full 18, 19 years, it's strange for all of us. Jellyfish was a big part of our and my identity. It was a family, friends and family. And one of the things I've been saying recently in a couple of the podcasts that I've done is that what's strange is that you outside of your working hours, you have a network and a circle of friends and family. That doesn't go away when you've moved away from the company you're working for, and then you introduce new people to your day hours. Suddenly, there's no time to see all of these people that you've been spending all day, every day during the working week, and have become friends and family, and suddenly there's no room to see them. So it's a very strange process, and I would say the due diligence and going through that for 12 months gives you a lot of time to adjust and get used to it. But like everything in life, sometimes you can prepare as much as you want for something to happen, but when it does, you don't know. You could prepare yourself for having children, and then when you have children, you just don't know. You don't know until it happens exactly how you're going to react and how it's going to change your life. So it's strange. It's great and it's sad. At the same time, it's different, and I just want to see. I'm just hoping that, like with Rhea, that with everybody in the business, that we've instilled all the right values, and that it goes on to do great things. But I know a lot of people have moved to other smaller agencies, and they're also instilling some of those values and processes and methodologies that we put in place. So hopefully we're going to actually have a wider impact than just Jellyfish as a legacy over time. So I'm just coming to terms with all of these emotions right now. And but all in all, I'm hoping it's going to be a great thing in the long run.
Yeah, what a great way to look at it as well, that actually it's got more of a wider legacy, and that, like you say, those values can move to other places as well. It's a real reframe, because I can feel that, like, that contradiction of emotions of like, wow, this is incredible, but also, Family, friends. Yeah, I hear it. It's
Yeah,
when did it actually complete? Was it 2023?
June 2023. Yeah.
It's still really fresh for you, to be fair. Like, you've only just gone through a first year of, not being in it anymore and not
Right.
kind
And
of...
of course, that's when the transaction happened. So where I was fully out of it and not engaging with anyone is even, more recent. So, yeah, there's a lot of transition and change. And, but I look back and the best way I describe it is that I take a little Polaroid, I take a snapshot of what Jellyfish was in June 2023. And I got a immense sense of pride and sense of achievement. I think our reputation, our client portfolio, the people, the team, the brand equity, the sort of trust and integrity that was there. It's just fantastic, and that's all I can say, because that's the moment that I in my leaving speech I spoke about being the boosters on a shuttle. They have a certain job and they get you to a certain stage, they drop off, and the shuttle just goes off into orbit. And I'm just hoping that we can look at it that way. And I've done the bit that I could do. And again, stretching the analogy, I've done the bit I can. I'm not going to sit with Ria at university and continue to give her guidance and monitor everything she's doing. So at some point, you've got to hope that they go on to do those amazing things themselves.
Absolutely. Yeah, I absolutely love that. And what a great, and you've got such a great future to look forward to as well. I can't wait to talk to you in a little bit about, your projects now and what you're up to and what the future might hold. I do have to ask, if what we hear is to be believed and that it was the largest sale of an independent agency, et cetera, I've got to ask what the magic trick is. What was the magic trick for creating an agency that was worth so much financially and to, like you say, more than just financially, but you actually leaving and having that sense of real pride and gratitude for what you've been through. What's the magic trick for that, do you think?
Oh, great question. People, collaborate, a team, and laser focused, having an extremely clear vision and mission of what we're trying to achieve. And that, of course, it's adapted, but it's often, if you're looking sort of 3 years in advance, the outcome doesn't really change that much. It's more where you pivot is around how you get there. And every time you make current decisions all of the time. But most importantly, you paint a picture so clear and so vivid that everybody on the team, everybody on that journey with you believes it's real. And it's easier to work towards something that you visualize that's real. You even make different decisions. Somebody might say, oh, you're a small team. And they say, well, I want to be the CTO. And you say, well, okay, have you got all that's required to be the CTO of that company, the one that's in 3 years' time? Because you painted it so clear. And they will say, possibly not. Well, why do you want to be the CTO now then? So wait, if you go on the journey, when we get to that point, if you think you're the appropriate person to be the CTO, but I'm not going to give you that title now, which means I can't bring in a CTO. What if you don't grow and you don't have the requisite skills, knowledge, experience, and aptitude to continue on that journey in that role? And so it has lots of peripheral benefits to constantly have everybody focused on where you're trying to get to. Also, it means, like everything in life, if you know what you're working towards, you could put the right things in place, and that you don't make decisions based short-term decisions in the same way. I would say another secret is that I personally, and this is just my personality, I personally took the sort of bodybuilder attitude, where if you had two scenarios and you had a tournament in 3 years' time, and you had one bodybuilder who was staying lean the whole time and, making sure that you could see that six pack, but they were training hard, trying to build up, and they were stayed lean the entire time. That's one scenario. And then there's another one, for 2 years, just carbs up, eats as much as possible, lifts as heavy as possible for 2 years, and then starts cutting for the tournament through the last year. who's going to be bigger. I think who's going to have the most impressive frame. And my attitude was always, we will generate the revenue to live to our means. We're going to pump everything back into growth. We're going to be, because we know the outcome that we're looking for, we're going to put the right infrastructure. And I famously use the analogy of the JPEG versus the vector image. And it's about making sure that you're building something that as it stretches, it doesn't lose its quality and integrity and clarity. And a JPEG, something could look really beautiful, small, and all wonderful. And as soon as you start to stretch, it loses it pixelates and loses its integrity. So we were investing up front in people, technology, methodology, and making sure that all coming together means that as we get to 1,000, 2,000, when we're multicultural, multi-geographical, when we have multiple products, we were systemizing everything that we did as well. So, that what I spoke about earlier, human capabilities, technology, and methodology coming together to deliver this solution and making sure that it's systemized in a way that we get continuity, we can test, analyze, refine, and just keep enhancing and innovating on the proposition. And that's not happening in silos because it's in one central place. Everybody that comes up with a new innovation or improves the way things are done, it comes back into that systemized methodology, and therefore everybody benefits from everybody's innovations. And things like that, I believe, all came together exponentially and allowed us to grow. Distributed accountability, not delegating, starting to break down that pyramid hierarchy was a big success factor for us. And for me, my own mental well-being is that everything didn't ladder up to me. I went into board meetings and was asked about a certain subject, and I said, I'm not accountable for delivering that, and I'm not going to spend 3 weeks preparing for this board meeting so that I know everything that's going on, so I have a bunch of subordinates that report into me so that if the board asks me any question, I've got the answer. For me, that's not good use of time. It was about bring the person in who's accountable for that initiative and they can tell you about it. I know what I'm accountable for, and we all work as a team and all know our place. All of our initiatives ladder up to our goal and our thematic goal and our mission and vision and primary business objectives. So we're all good, and everybody can concentrate on where they add value. And we're matching capabilities to initiatives, not necessarily job roles. And that gives you all that flexibility. So as an example, one of our missions was to be the biggest boutique agency in the world. And it sounds very fluffy. And it sounds like, oh, that's the most ambiguous goal anybody can come up with. Until you go one layer down and say, what are the traits of a boutique agency? And, that you're adaptable, that you treat every client like they're your number one client, because they probably are, because you're a boutique agency. All the owners are probably historically worked for big agencies and have now come together and have business acumen and experience. People don't have specific roles because you don't have enough people to have a role for all the different functions. So the person who's best placed based on their skills, knowledge and experience are the ones that do those tasks. And all of these things, we thought, well, okay, how do we preserve that as we scale? And came up with a bunch of initiatives. And so how we communicate in a boutique agency, normally you're around one table and everybody hears what everybody's doing and feel connected. So how do we instill that in an organization that's got 38 global offices? So it led us, because we knew where we wanted to be and we wanted to still be operating as if we were a boutique agency, we put all these things in place. So I've rattled through a few things, but I suppose the moral of the story is that there's not one thing that you could say is the secret. It's a bunch of things that you do. And in all honesty, most of the time you're looking back with retrospective wisdom and hindsight and say, oh yeah, they were the successful things. But, ultimately the bullets missed us. And there were some times where we could have easily faltered and we didn't. And perseverance and resilience, relentless pursuit of our mission, and knowing that we've got a trusted team around us, everybody working with the right intentions, working for the same goal, got each other's back, not threatened, not political. That all of those factors, I think, got us to where we were.
That's incredible. And the way you talk about it makes it sound so right. It makes so much sense, right? To be going, actually, yeah, the people who are accountable should be the ones, and having these principles and really stripping back and using those to, scale with how you were growing. And yet also really scary at the same time, because we're so used to these hierarchies, aren't we? And these organizational structures, that stepping away from that, did you ever feel nervous about stepping away from that, or was that just ingrained right from the start and it just felt like the norm for you?
Yeah, so it felt like the norm because it became really apparent to me quite early on that I didn't really have subordinates. I had a support network, and that was the premise that everything was built upon. If I was going into either a board meeting or a podcast or a meeting and I had to talk about strategic planning, I would go to our head of planning, we didn't have, in the end, we didn't have heads of, but a senior person on the planning steering group or whatever, and I would ask them to share with me what's the great things that we're doing, what is the marketplace scenario right now, what's the innovative things that we're doing, whether it's analytics, finance. I always had people that were way more experienced, more skilled, knowledgeable, and I would just go to them, and they made me a better CEO. I wasn't their boss giving them opportunities and making them good at their job. It was always the other way around. And then I suddenly thought, how does that change anywhere else? Everybody should have people supporting them to be their best selves and to bring their best selves to work and to do their best work. This boss mentality where you're accountable for everything, but somebody else is responsible for delivering it. It just wasn't working. And for me, I always had that attitude, so it wasn't scary. Not everybody likes it. It isn't for everyone. Some people have made their career, and got to their seniority based on verbal dexterity, knowing what to say, when to say, relationship building, politics, optics, all of those things. But what we did over time was eradicate the ability to mask a lack of value exchange and to play the game and to romance your boss to then get pay rises and traction within the organization. Because it gets to the stage where it becomes, if I got your back, no matter what you do, if I say great things about you and get you promoted, then I'm relying on you to get me promoted. And then you get these little relationships where everybody loves their boss because they keep getting traction, and you're just slipstreaming them and getting lots of promotion. And maybe the whole group's not adding value and there's not a great value exchange for the business. But it was a way of us making sure that all of that didn't happen systemically in the organization, because I believe culture, I believe the values, etc., actually end up being a symptom of getting the right foundations and systemically running your business in the right way. People start to demonstrate the right values. The culture becomes a great culture. Your reputation, the people, the engagement with your team, people start realizing, well, these are transparent people with integrity that actually work well together and are delivering a valuable proposition at exemplary levels of service. And then you end up with this sort of brand equity, and a brand is what a brand does, and a brand is the people that work for that brand and the culture and all of those things. And I think they're all symptoms. And so we kept going to the root cause.
The root cause, yeah, absolutely. I think you mentioned as well, I picked up on the fact that you said we got rid of heads of in the end, and does that even come down to that sort of language as well, like you know, that kind of reframe of let's get rid of this head of, or
managers. We didn't even have managers. We only had leaders and support networks. So everybody can have leadership, and leadership you've got to take quite seriously. It's a big responsibility to be a leader, and you've got to lead by example, and you've got to make sure that you demonstrate all of our values, and that you don't get it by authority. A leader is earned, and it's through respect. It's through delivering tangible outcomes. It's through being available and inspiring and all of those things that when you think leaders, the great leaders of the world, they're the traits that we were looking for. Managers, that's not what we're looking for, because we didn't want anybody to have to be policed. We wanted you to actually understand what the outcomes and be accountable for the outcomes that you got to deliver. You could still be held to account, but it's not going to be by a boss. And so, that language was out. We replaced managers with leadership. We replaced bosses with support networks. So every one person had a mentor, a people partner, and a capability partner, and they were their support network to help them to perform their job and to achieve their goals. And one of the great things, because you had to, I go back to the systemic changes, what we had to do is that we had to change the way people were promoted, because if you didn't have a boss who decides whether you get promoted, so that's where we started introducing the business case process, where you submit a business case and it's really just to answer the question, why? So when you go, historically, you go to your boss or people will complain in the canteen and they go, oh, I feel I should be promoted. But why? And what ended up happening is that you had to demonstrate what you were doing over and above your role, that you took accountability for and were delivering tangible outcomes and value exchange. But what that also did is, without even the whole business knowing, it changed the attitude to, I've got to demonstrate I can do the job before I apply to get it. So it no longer is it, well, you've got to give me the authority, you've got to give me the exposure to the information, you've got to give me that title before I expect to do any of that job. So it's all speculative, it's all based on the past. Whereas now, we've flipped it on its head, and the entire business are putting together development plans or projects that they put on the matrix, impact versus effort, going for as much impact that they could have through tangible outcomes. And then they put that all together as a case to say, look at me, I'm adding more value. Can I have more money, please? And then it's unequivocal. There's no arguing against it, because you've put that, and it could be validated by other leadership or stamped within the organization. So I would say it had tangible success, and it sort of builds a different mindset. And so the answer is yes, in a very long, convoluted way.
No, that's amazing. I love that. So when it came to the sale of Jellyfish then, how important was everything that you'd built around people and culture and purpose and, this infrastructure that you made? How important was that in the sale? Was it even, did they look at that? Was that part of what they looked at when they sort of valued you guys?
A bit, but like everything, I don't think anyone ever should pat themselves on the back for putting the infrastructure. It's the outcomes. So yes, a sports person, preparation is key. That when you then go out to perform, you can relax and go into it knowing you did all the exercise, the nutrition, the practice, listen to your coach, you did all the preparation, and then you go out and perform. But ultimately, the outcome, the medal, the win, Wimbledon, football, whatever it is, it's the outcome that you're looking for. And I think they really bought into the outcome. And so we put a lot into place to make that happen. There was a hell of a lot of process, preparation, structure, talent, all of those blood, sweat, and tears. There was a lot of that was put into it. And then the outcome was the thing that they bought. So, and I think that it was very different. So most of the people looking into how we were doing things either wouldn't necessarily agree or understand in the way that we did. And that's also, it's not a criticism. It's not saying they wouldn't be smart enough to understand. What I'm basically saying is that when you build something that's quite sophisticated and culturally ingrained, and it's happened slowly and organically over a period of time, it's very hard to jump in at the end and catch up. There's so many different nuances and in how you operate in this sophisticated way. So I don't think any of that was the reason. It was the fact that I was told many times there's not one organization or person that we spoke to that didn't have positive things to say about Jellyfish. Whether that's all the networks, all of our clients, people, what they did say is that this was a group of nice, smart people who deliver a great value exchange for their service and has a wonderful reputation in the marketplace. So, and that's what they bought.
Amazing. And I think I'm so intrigued by that, because I think of our bench press report at WOW, right? And we've just released this one on maximizing value within an agency. And it's all really kind of tangible things that come up as you'd expect. I wrote some of them down. We've got profit, growth, being niched, management structure, recurring revenue, risk, things like that, right? And they're all, like I say, tangible boxes to tick that you can go through and go, yep, this is going well. Yep, we've had this. And it just always intrigues me where that reputation and culture and purpose, like how it fits into the sale of an agency. And it sounds like on your side, it was just something that, like you say, you almost couldn't pinpoint it. It had just been kind of growing and growing organically over all this time. And it was the outcome that ended up being the answer.
It underpinned. Now, could we have been more profitable? I mean, all investors and everybody that wanted to buy us or continue to run the company, everybody wants it to be more profitable, of course. But could we have been bigger? Maybe. But I think we were profitable. And like I said, the bodybuilder mentality means that we had enormous exposure for an independent agency, to be in 20-something countries and to have one global P&L and to have the clients that we had and all of those things. The only way to build it is to keep pumping in and investing, and some was organic, some was through acquisitions. But yeah, I think that there are lots of different options, obviously, for us, but to go on different paths. But that's the one we chose, to get scale, to be able to mitigate the risk by having a broad spectrum of products and clients and regional presence, and to align ourselves with the big networks. All of that became the success factor. But those metrics can't be ignored. They are important. But sometimes I wonder, because profit is much more important as a valuation metric if the multiple is always fixed. If every single agency sold for the exact same multiple of the EBITDA, then I would say, okay, EBITDA is everything. But you can't then adjust the multiple and say, well, this agency is 8 times their EBITDA, but that one will pay 15 times. How does that work? So there must be other factors that's allowing them to change the multiple. And so, yeah, it's about getting that. Investors for SaaS businesses look at the rule of 40. Have you heard of the rule of 40?
I haven't. Please tell me.
It's essentially this formula where they basically, the idea is it's the percentage of growth or the profit has to add up to 40. So you could have 40% year-on-year growth and break even, or you could have 20% profit and 20% year-on-year growth, or you could have 40% profit and flat. But essentially, those two metrics need to add up to 40. That's a way of acknowledging that sometimes growth comes at the expense of profit. And so I think it's a similar thing. I don't think there's any one metric that is the sole determining factor on what you're going to be valued. But to your point, this underlying culture and values and purpose, I don't know how that actually fits in and it sort of indexes against the value of a business. I just don't think it quite does that. I think in the future it will. I do believe that there's with a lot more emphasis on purpose and for example, whether the diversity and the equity within your business, what it's doing to the planet, all of those factors are going to, I think, in the future be an index on the value of the business, because it just cannot all be down to profit. It just can't.
And you mentioned there as well about you talked about mitigating risks, and I know when we spoke before, you talked about kind of, I love this analogy that you used of fighting monsters.
Yeah.
Can you talk to us a little bit about what you mean by that?
Yeah, so I always use this Stranger Things analogy that, like on that program, obviously everybody's fighting all these little monsters and they're overwhelmed by all of these monsters. And then in the end, you can actually go and kill the mother monster and they all drop dead. And I think that a business could be so busy and exhausted fighting all the symptoms. And everybody can think that, I am working really hard and I am putting in the hard graft day in, day out, and everybody's monopolized by dealing with all of these symptoms, when sometimes you can go straight and mitigate the risk of those things happening by putting the right infrastructure and taking the time to invest and working out what is the root cause. And then you can eradicate so many problems by just getting one thing right. And then if you used all the resources and the energy that were fighting the symptoms, and then just go to the root cause and put the right thing in place. And I think that's what we try to do all the time. We were constantly trying to, what is the root cause? And therefore, as an example, if you want more equity and genuine diversity within your business, I don't believe hiring a black female DE&I director is the answer necessarily. I think that you've got to systemically change the way things work. And therefore, if you go straight to where the unconscious bias is sitting or where lack of opportunity resides, then you can actually address the root cause systemically. And in the end, you're not even having to put these superficial measures in place or constantly combating and putting metrics that people are working towards, which drives tokenism and the wrong behaviors. You're just going to naturally become a diverse business, and all of the energy that would have gone into that, you could apply to something that's more productive and strategic, and will get better results in the future. So yeah, that's kind of what I meant and how I use that analogy.
Yeah, it's definitely setting you up for success as well, isn't it? It feels almost like a bigger, well, it is, isn't it? It's the bigger problem that you have to tackle, but actually by doing that, your future success is just going to come much, much easier.
Yeah.
And what about kind of core traits of an agency, and especially an agency that's scaling? Do we see, like, should core traits be changing with scale?
It depends, but by traits, if it's like values, etc. No, I think that you will add more products. You could add more people, add more regions, add more partners, add more clients. All of those things will start to grow. But ultimately, I think what you've got to do is just, as I say, put the things in place that you end up with a group of people that's like the body that would reject the organ if somebody comes in and isn't the right fit, and that they just feel uncomfortable and leave. I think I don't think those things ever change. I don't think you should ever compromise transparency. I think you should always be a people person business, and that you should try and help people who have taken you to a certain stage on the journey. I think that by not having a sort of stringent role-based organization will allow you to be more adaptable and match people's skills to capabilities to initiatives, and then you can be genuinely diverse. Somebody that has these particular capabilities don't always fit into the whole role. And so if you're matching them with the initiatives that matter, they can do that better than anyone else. And we say to everybody at Jellyfish that you are unequivocally the best at one or many things. If you put these principles in place, and that's the culture, then I think, I don't think you need to compromise on any of those things as you're growing. You're just concentrating on the actual commercial side of things and expanding your client portfolio and the number of products you can offer, essentially.
Yeah, that's great. That's really practical, useful advice. Thank you. Okay, cool. So now, I mentioned it earlier, I'm really intrigued to know a little bit about what you're up to now, what projects you're involved in. Tell us where you're at.
So there's a bit around advisory and investment, and I got to be very careful that I am mainly a business operator, and promoting yourself to an investor is a very risky thing, because you see all the great and you want to do it all over again. And I'm so optimistic and enthusiastic about every entrepreneur and their ideas and their businesses. So I've sort of decided that my skills are more around building and scaling a business. So I look at that, and my main investments are probably slightly later stage organizations that are now looking to either globalize their proposition or expand their portfolio, build their teams. That's where I'm spending some time. So I've got about 4 or 5 investments that are scaling businesses where I've got a kind of non-official advisory role. I'm not a massive fan, as you might have guessed, with boards. Not a fan of boards, I should say. I think that doesn't distribute accountability, and I think it leads to delaying decision-making because you've got to wait for a board meeting and then sign off and all of those things. And I think that often you've got a group of people that don't really ever have enough granular detail or understanding to make decisions or to make that call. So I'd rather, again, instill the thought process, provoke thought at the right time, impart some of my retrospective wisdom, but most importantly, make sure that these individuals are empowered to continue on the journey, because that's what we bought into in the first place. So that's what I'm doing. Then I've got a couple of trustee positions. I'm a trustee on the Migration Museum, which is all about educating people that the UK is one big migration story. And they're just their campaign is out again, and you should see their poster. If the England team didn't have any migration story, I think it was two or three of them on the team, and so that's a great mission. But it's really just, again, this is about getting to the root cause. I think lack of inclusion, discrimination, all of that comes from a particular mindset and paradigm that I'm so enthusiastic about this site that we're going to have that just tells the story. Everything from what we think is quintessentially English, like Marks and Spencer's, is a migration story, and it just goes on and on. The NHS couldn't have existed without the migration story. And so I'm a trustee on that, and also the Lucy Rayner Foundation here in Surrey, which is suicide, bereavement, and prevention. So got those two, but the thing taking up quite a bit of my time is actually that. This is the symbol. It's Inside Out. It's a clothing brand for ex-offenders and people leaving the criminal justice system. It provides employment. They tell their story through a design. It's all sort of street urban clothing like hoodies, t-shirts, caps, tote bags. But each of the participants and the designers, they tell their story in a design, and we put it on the merchandise. They get commission if it's sold, but we're going to be opening up pop-up stores where they can work in the stores. They can work with us on the marketing, whatever. I mean, the idea is to stop reoffending, but also to give them not even a second chance. Often it's their first chance because they've just been set up by their circumstances. Who was it that spoke about the ovarian lottery? The winners of the ovarian lottery. It's like some people just are born into difficult circumstances. And we're just trying to say that if you've done your time and you're out, we're going to give you a purpose, and they can earn an honest wage, pay their taxes. And unfortunately, in this world, 80% of young ex-offenders will not get a job. And that's going to cause a problem, obviously. And 50% will reoffend. And it's just, and I'm not surprised.
It's a never-ending cycle if that's the case, right?
Exactly. So I've worked with Greg McKenzie. It was his passion project, and I'm now supporting, funding, helping him put the infrastructure in so that we can actually start to have more and more impact every year by building it and creating more opportunities. So that's what's taking my time at the moment.
Wow. I mean, they all sound like such purposeful projects, investments, whatever it is you'd refer to them as, and just how fulfilling to be able to support in that wider way. We ask everybody on the podcast, but I love hearing all the different answers, and I'm really intrigued to know what you're going to say. What does beautiful business mean to you?
Oh wow, I think I actually, you could probably distill everything in this podcast episode into my answer to this.
I know, that's why I'm so excited to hear how you're going to just put it into a sentence.
What's that famous saying? I didn't have time to write a short story, so I wrote a long one instead. I would say beautiful business is when there is an absolute fair and equitable value exchange between the customer and the supplier, and that there's full integrity, transparency, and values and purpose in order to deliver that great value exchange. That's how I would sum it up.
Perfect. Yeah, you definitely got that short story. Well done. I have absolutely loved speaking to you today, Rob. I think there's so much that I've learned from you, from your experiences, but also from your kind of really practical advice and tips. So just thank you so much for spending some time with me today. And I can't wait to see how your projects turn out. I'm really excited for you.
It's been so much fun. Thank you. And I'm sure you'll be checking in to find out how we're going. And
absolutely.
Hopefully it will be a similar story to when I did that interview in the Shard. Maybe we can look back at this podcast and say, yeah, we did some good stuff.
That would be amazing, wouldn't it? I love that. Thanks, Rob.
Thanks so much.
Thank you for listening to the Beautiful Business Podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, then please remember to subscribe and leave us a review. For more advice and practical tips on what it's really like to build a beautiful business, visit our content hub at wowco.uk/hub or check out the link in the show notes.